This stream is about to start. We'll talk about code or whatever we'll talk about today. It's about to start, so please hang tight while I check that everything is okay. Sound check, camera check, lights check. How's my hair? Oh, wait, I don't have any hair. Maybe put some pants on and I am good to go. So get ready wherever you are, 'cause this stream is about to start. Get ready wherever you are, 'cause this stream is about to start. Hello everyone and welcome to another meeting of the C++ Digital Signal Processing JUCE and plenty of other things study group. How are you all doing?
Very well.
How are you?
Thank you.
Yeah, so I have with me Fotis and also on the call, but not visible, Bo and Cwits. And we all have news, good news, bad news. And so who wants to go first?
Fotis.
I just built a plugin, so can I go first?
Absolutely.
It literally compiled 5 minutes ago. It's working.
Awesome.
It's not perfect, but it's working. So
Tell us about it.
So yeah, remember how I was going to make a hybrid wavetable / sampler synth? And I was originally going to record some samples from my dad's Yamaha synth, but then I just got hired to become a teacher in a totally different place. I'm now in Rethymnon, Crete. Crete is this large island that is at the bottom of Greece, if you're familiar with the map. So, and I was living in North Greece, so I literally had to go from the top to the bottom of Greece and find a new place to stay and get hired and set up computers. And today I taught a class for the first time, 3 classes in fact. And also I made a plugin, yeah. And because I didn't have the time to record those samples I was telling you about, so instead I used some public domain samples, and I'm going to send you a link for them. I'm going to show everything. 1 sec, I'm going to share my screen.
But how was
And
the
my
experience teaching? I am interested in knowing that.
Yeah, it was very good. Your advice was very helpful.
Oh, really?
And apart from that, yeah, I have some experience, some small experience with teaching. That was my first time teaching kids. I did have some experience with teaching adults in smaller classes, and also even in my university for a couple of days. But this was my very first time working in an elementary school, but since both of my parents are teachers and I have seen them work a lot, I was prepared for that a lot. So yeah, it was a nice experience overall. I had a nice communication with the students. I went very easy on them because I didn't go like, hey, I'm Fotis, the computer geek, let's do some complicated stuff. I wanted to ease them in as much as I could. And I believe I succeeded in that, and I think the kids like me. So
Awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, we always hear that children are very good with electronics because they were born in the space. And I wonder, what is it that you are teaching them, and how well they already know these kinds of things?
Oh yeah, there were 3 classes, the 3 grades. We have a system with 6 grades in Greece. So the 5th grade was about teaching them how to use Microsoft Word. Some of students were already familiar with it, others had never used the Word before. So I focused on them. And then the other 2 grades the fourth and the second one, smaller kids, younger. I meant younger. I had to make the first lesson without even turning on the computer. I just used the pen and the table, and I taught them the basics of the computer hardware, the peripherals, and what goes inside them. And I hope they got a good grasp of them. I had to go even easier on the even younger kids. I only taught them about the screen and the keyboard and stuff. But on the fourth grade, I also went deep into the CPU, motherboard, and stuff like that.
Oh, so you're teaching what is inside the computer. Very interesting.
Yeah.
When teaching them how to use Microsoft Word, please, for me, teach them not to indent paragraphs with tabs. I don't know if in Greek you use that kind of separation between paragraphs with a new line and indentation. Perhaps you just use space.
Oh, yeah.
But if you use new line and indentation, don't use tabs. Please teach them how to use formatting on the text processor.
I will.
On the word processor.
I will make a note of that.
That's my pet peeve.
Yeah, great. Yeah, I totally get it. 1 sec, I want to find my folder with the wavetables.
Okay, so while you're doing that, I'm going to cut the audio real quick to bring you into the overlay when we start seeing your screen. So we will not be heard on the stream for just a sec. Okay, now we see your computer.
Yes, awesome. Where are my... Oh yeah, this is my wavetable folder. So these... Oh yeah, I wanted to see the name of the developer. So his name is Kimura Taro. And Kimura... Hold on, I gotta fix the light because I can't see my URLs. So this person, Kimura Taro, has a bunch of freeware and public domain wavetables for synths. Yes, it says that they cost $3, but this is actually a compromise he had to do because of Gumroad. Gumroad does have a limit on free downloads, and then you have to put a price. So in order to circumvent that, wait, I'm gonna show this link in an incognito window because you can see the discount code. So this is how you hack Gumroad, ladies and gentlemen. Yeah, you can actually get this for free. Where is it? Oh, you can't even see it here. But oh, there it is. You add this, you type $3, and then on checkout you use this free code on the discount code, and then you get it for free.
That's very nice.
But you can also donate if you want to support this project, and all these wavetables are free. CC 0, public domain, Creative Commons 0. So I used this, the Carplus Strong, the one of the FM, I think. No, it's
that's interesting to use Gumroad to distribute something that is free and run into a limitation that you're not allowed to distribute your own thing for free. I wonder why the person decided to go this route. They could have used something like, I don't know, Google Drive, Dropbox, archive.org, so many options, and then take the contributions via like Patreon, PayPal, and whatnot.
Oh, maybe he could do that, yeah. Maybe he did it because he wants donations, but he could do it via PayPal. But the cool thing about Gumroad is that it automatically informs you when he does an update. I don't know if you can do it with Patreon.
Oh, you could always post to your patrons, and I guess in something like GitHub is probably a good place to distribute this sort of stuff. Then you can subscribe to releases and get updates that way. Anyway.
Okay, so I'm using only two samples. The one is from the wavetable the wavetable bundle I just showed you, and the other one is also. Well, I'm gonna play back both samples. You can hear it.
Yes.
And I'm gonna change the speed to 4, so it goes like 2 octaves, right? Or 4.
hang on.
Yeah,
A wavetable, isn't it just like one slice?
cycle, yeah.
You're gonna use that slice and repeat it real fast.
Yeah, I'm gonna show you what happens in HISE. This is where the magic happens. Is it too loud? It is too loud on my end.
It's a bit loud, yeah.
Okay. Anyway, so this is the one sample, and the other one, which is from VSCL. It's another public domain sample library that is actually on GitHub. I'm going to post links later. And I'm using this sample of a harp, and I normalized it in Reaper. It does have some noise, but I only did it as a test. Anyway, and here is my plugin. I'm going to show you how it works, what I succeeded in and what I failed at, and then I'm going to show you my HISE project and how I did it. By the way, I still haven't updated my HISE because they are currently implementing Faust. You know Faust? It's an audio programming language, and I think that it's still buggy, that implementation. They're still working on it, and I'm afraid that it might interfere with my current build, so I'm not touching it yet.
Are you updating because you're interested in playing around with Faust, or are you interested in other features, or you just like want to keep up to date?
All three of those.
Okay.
Anyway, so this is my thing. It's called Hybrid. Yeah, it's a terrible pun, like always. I came up with it an hour ago. And yes, I did think of using bread samples, but I only have some cheap toast bread, and I need to buy some high quality 24-bit bread. You know how it goes. So this is... So what you're hearing right now is two audio generators playing at the same time, a sampler and a wavetable synth. So let's turn this down. Now you're only hearing that harp sample. And now you're listening to a wavetable synth because HISE has a function of loading any wave file and only taking one cycle out of that and repeating it, like Leandro said. And this is muting all of them. Fairly simple stuff, but the one thing that I wanted to create and couldn't was a blend knob. I wanted to crossfade between the two. So if the knob was all the way to the left, you would listen to the sampler, and all the way to the right, you would listen to the synth, and you could do crossfade between them. But routing in HISE is a bit complicated, and even wavetable synthesis is a bit complicated, but I'm going to show you how I did it.
So I guess this starts to answer that question I asked you many weeks back. That is, why do a whole plugin instead of just a contact patch or library? I don't know, instrument? How do they call these things? Anyway, because I don't think that you can use contact to do this hybrid where you have a synthesizer playing along with the sample, right?
Now it was implemented in Contact version 6. And version 7 came out a few weeks ago, so now you can. You couldn't, but you can now. But I have no idea how wavetable synthesis works in Contact. So, but I'm going to show you how you do it in HISE.
All right.
First, I'm going to find the HISE forum thread. This is not the one. This is the another. Sorry, this was another thread that where there was a. Oh yeah, I have to talk about this problem that I had. Oh, there it is. It's a fairly new thread. I'm going to link to this thread and not the YouTube video that is embedded because it is unlisted. But you can watch it from here. So this guy shows the technique. and I'm going to show you only the relevant parts because he actually creates a wavetable from scratch here in Wave Edit. It's an external editor, and then it doesn't allow me to go full screen. I'm just going to go to YouTube.
Hang on.
Sorry?
How do you create the wavetable using this software? Do you record stuff and then chop it, or do you like draw waveforms?
No, he did take a ready-made sample from a synth software that he created, and then he chopped the single cycle waveform.
Okay.
But HISE does allow you to do some fun things. So you create a wavetable synthesizer, as you can see here, and then you create a sampler instance which you can delete afterwards. You only do it so that you can drop the sample inside. You create the regions like we saw in the last video, but then here is the tricky part. You have to go to Tools and then go here where it says Convert Sample Map to Wavetable Bank. So what it does is, in my case, it's here in audio files, it creates these files called HWT, HISE wavetable. And then you load this in the wavetable synthesizer instance. Now I'm going to go to HISE and I'm going to show you everything I did step by step. And I'm going to tell you about the difficulties I had while creating this project and how to overcome them in our usual way of doing workarounds. Where is the project? So there it is. Oh, I keep forgetting how to load the... There it is. So here is my project file. I already explained how to create the knobs. It's nothing special, it's the same stuff. And I deleted the sampler I created. So this is playing the harp, right? And this is the wavetable synth. And watch what happens. I'm going to mute the sampler. I'm going to only play the synthesizer. And no, don't worry, we don't have the ghost key this time around. But do you see that it's scanning the waveform? It's doing a wavetable in real time, actually. These are the harmonics, but I tweaked them and it sounds the same. I don't know what's up with that. But the thing that this thing was sounding way more annoying than you hear it now. So I implemented some effects. This is another thing that I'm starting to familiarize with HISE. It's like a treasure trove. I'm finding new stuff every time I load it. So we have a filter and it has a Moog low pass filter and the bicode, but I prefer the sound of the Moog. I'm not gonna show you how it sounds without the filter because it sounds so chirpy, so shrieky, high frequencies, it's going to pierce your ears. So you're welcome. And also we have a compressor here because there were also some inconsistencies in the volume. And could you take a look at this bar here? It's reacting to the audio. So you can see what you're compressing, and also it does makeup. And you also have a limiter and the gate, which I didn't use, but I could have used the gate in the sample of the harp if I wanted to get rid of the noise, right? So the first problem I have, which I didn't find a solution for, was to create a group that would that I would place the sampler and the wavetable synthesizer inside. There is a way to do it with the send containers, but it's still fairly tricky. I didn't see in the documentation, I saw a routing matrix, but I couldn't figure out how to do it like in Reaper, like you go here and you tell this channel not to send the audio to the master, but instead to send it to another track. I want to do this in HISE. So these things are not sending their audio to the master, but instead they're sending them to a send container where, like a group, where I can do knobs and crossfading and stuff. I'm sure there is a way, but it's gonna be tough. And the other and final problem I had, which I found a not very elegant solution for, was that the sampler could not find the wavetables. So it forced me to copy the files in my roaming, Fotis and stuff, hybrid audio files folder. This is where you have to copy the files. And I found a solution in the forum. This is the other thread that I wanted to show. This person solved this problem by creating a custom installer for his HISE plugin.
Oh no.
Yeah, and he created a script which you can see here. Where is it? No, that's the one, yeah. So he created this entire script where you can tell it where to store the wavetables and the stuff. It works. It's ugly, but it works.
Generally, how are these plugins distributed? Does HISE create an installer?
I don't think it does. Yeah.
Okay.
Because where it is, I think somebody said it here on the thread.
Well, it is a problem that is very complicated because you have to deal with notarizing and of course signing, and you have to deal with updates, and you have to deal with these files that you need to put in particular places. So installers are complicated and perhaps out of the scope of this. The HISE would just give you a VST3 and it's your business to deliver that somehow.
Yeah, this person says that they had to create their own installer in HISE. It will be possible, but like you said, it will come with its own set of setbacks, because I dealt with this with Cabbage. When I loaded some C-Sound projects, some of them had some dependencies. And when I was exporting the plugin, even in standalone or as VST, I couldn't build them with the dependencies inside them. Even I had to create an installer manually, and I had no idea how to do it, so I gave up. But that was only for a few specific projects that I have no interest in using again. So there is my thingy.
I have a question about the wavetable you showed us in HISE. It was picking different parts of the wavetable depending on the node. How was it doing that?
Good question. I don't know yet, because like you said, I was supposed to load a single cycle file, and instead I loaded that mess. But that thing was like 2048 samples. It is a wavetable, and I should have created a single cycle waveform instead. I don't know. But what it does, I think it's kind of a wave scanning, or this thing that they call insert or vital. I think that it chops the waveform into partials, and then it plays different parts of it regarding on the node. I don't know yet. And maybe it has to do with that's a method I showed earlier, where you load the sample. I'm gonna show it again, so you know what I'm talking about. So when you yes. Did it get stuck? No. So let's go to the sampler workspace. So when you load the sampler, you chop it into regions, and I believe that had an impact on the wavetable exporting. because it chopped. I guess it actually chopped the wavetable into pieces and dropped each one of them in keys. I don't know how the wavetable function works in HISE, but from what I've read in the forums, the developer hasn't worked on the wavetable thing for a long time, so it is due for an update. And I hope that once he settles with the whole Faust stuff, that he gives another look to the wavetable mystery.
You know what could be interesting? Doing a wavetable based on the sample that you are also playing.
Yeah. And also I would like to find, I did see some recipes, that's how they call them, I guess, some code in Faust. So because I have heard some interesting synths with no GUI, just sound, that are running in Faust. So if I could find that code and I could implement it in HISE, that would be great. It would open the door for a new set of possibilities, and maybe there is a separate wavetable function in the Faust, but that would not be elegant as well, because if you're thinking about it, you're using a framework on top of a framework on top of a framework. So you're running Faust on top of HISE on top of JUCE, right?
Yeah, I'm not sure if Faust would be the right choice for this.
Yeah.
Because of what you explained, and also because as far as I know, I don't know the language a whole lot, but I think it's more meant for processing audio in the time domain, not so much for dealing with samples, this other facet, which is like more managing the libraries and finding the files and this sort of thing. I think that those would be in an outer shell that uses Faust.
And one final thing I want to show before I wrap up my segment is something like, it's gonna be my homework for next time, along with the crossfade knob, if I ever get to do it. But this thing right here, no, where is it? Is it here? Yeah. This thing called table index. It has some modulators, and maybe you can use these to jump between wavetables, or to modulate the selection of wavetables. That could be interesting if I pull it off. So if I go here to the body and load multiple wavetables somehow, maybe I could create a modulation that switches between different wavetables based on LFO, or based on MPE, or MIDI pressure, velocity, and whatever. So that would be interesting, right? And I have to take a look at some more of these effects. And I think this may be the solution to my problem, the routing matrix and the synth effect. But in order to do that, I have to first figure out how to mute the audio so it doesn't go to master, but only to the synths.
Right. Or maybe you could also try something that's my headspace right now, because I'm working with parameters and the 500 different ways in which they occur. But you could also implement this just by having one parameter that is exposed to the user that controls the other two parameters that you showed us.
Oh, yeah.
Internally, it would not show those to the user, but it would control these two.
Oh, yeah, you're right. It would be much easier than what I explained. I could create like a meta parameter, if you will, right?
Yeah.
So the knob that is not visible, and I should create a parameter that controls this super parameter. Yeah, I get it. It's gonna be interesting. Yes, I'm gonna make a note of that. Thank you.
Yeah.
So that's it for me. From me today, I'm going to turn off the share screen, and then I'm gonna post the links that I showed in the chat, the Skype chat, so you can post them in the study group notes.
Sounds great.
Cool. Cwits, should I go or should you go? Do you have anything? Or do you want to go, Leandro? You always get last.
I can do a quick update because I have not worked on the auto mixer in C++. Wow, wow, wow. But I answered my question from last meeting. I got an oscilloscope probe that has a 1x 10x switch. And for context, the question last meeting was, I bought an oscilloscope that came with probes that are only in the 10x position, a 10 times attenuation to the signal. And that is usually what you want to use for most measurements. But for very small signals, so for instance, for the signal that comes out of a microphone at mic level, it's very weak. And if you try to see that in the oscilloscope, there is just too much noise. You can barely make out the signal from the noise. And my question was, if I, instead of using a 10 times attenuation probe, I use a 1x attenuation, so no attenuation at all, will that help? Will that capture less noise? And the answer is, unfortunately, no, it's about the same. From what I read online, it was supposed to make a bit of a difference, but not really, not for mic level signals. So I guess the gist is, at least in my oscilloscope, which is a cheap oscilloscope from 10 years ago that I bought secondhand, for that one, I'm not able to see the waveform coming straight out of a microphone and probably something like a guitar. But I can always amplify that. And that's usually the first thing you want to do anyway to a signal. And when you amplify that, you will be able to see it on the oscilloscope just fine. So whatever. I will not be able to see some things, but I will be able to see, like, when I start playing around with a voltage-controlled oscillator, that's usually like 10 volts peak to peak. I will be fine. We were talking about the noise of a, like, 30, 20 millivolts. If I'm talking about 10 volts, I will be able to see the waveform just fine. So that's the answer to the question. Does it matter to use a 1x or 10x probe? Not much. And I guess I also did some research, and it seems like for this kind of oscilloscope, the noise that I'm getting is kind of typical. So there's nothing wrong with the oscilloscope. It's just how things work. And
guitars usually have a way higher output than microphones.
Yes, I haven't tried with the guitar. Maybe I will, but I also expect that instrument level may be too quiet, and probably I'm confident I will be able to see signals at line level pretty well, but below that, I'm not so sure. We'll see. I'm sure that mic level, it's all noise. I mean, yeah, you can sort of make out if I bump the microphone or if you blow air into the microphone, you will see some of the form of the wave, but nothing useful. For instrument level, I will try, but at line level, I think I will be good. And there are many circuits that actually run above that, like the synthesizers in modular synthesizers tend to use 10 volts peak to peak, which is much more than line level. So I think it will be good. And that's pretty much it for my update. I also did a bunch of other things with electronics, like fixing a microwave oven, but no one wants to hear about that. The long and short of it is that it is paying off very well to learn about electronics. I'm saving so much money.
Awesome.
Like at 700 euros at this point is how much money I saved from fixing things around the house because I learned about electronics. Just enough to be dangerous, especially when working with microwave ovens, just enough to be dangerous.
So yeah, welcome to the C++, JUCE, and microwave oven study group.
Yeah, gotta love it.
So
What was wrong with the microwave? Sorry.
Oh yeah, well, I watched hours and hours of YouTube videos on how to diagnose things, and it turns out that there was one thing wrong with the microwave, and while trying to diagnose it, I broke another thing. So the capacitor that goes in the microwave, the high voltage capacitor, the one that you have to discharge before you try and diagnose things or you can be killed, that one was bad on my microwave.
Okay.
And that was okay. I just had to buy a new one, €6, and it was fixed. But while I was learning how the microwave worked, I also burned one of those switches that go in the door that tell the oven if its door is open or not. And it turns out that if you don't have that, the microwave just does not work. It's a security mechanism. So I had to buy some of those as well and replace. And since we are talking about this, microwave ovens have the craziest, among other things, it has this one feature for security that is like the craziest thing. I don't really understand exactly why they do it, but they have this series of switches on the door, and the little hooks will press the switches when you close the door, and there are usually 2 or 3 of them, but there is also a matter of the order. So if you push the lower hook first and then the upper hook, or vice versa, depending on your model, the security feature is it shorts the live wire. It shorts the power line. I guess the intent is that, of course, your breaker will pop, but why do they do that? Why don't they just leave the circuit open? I have no idea, but that's how I blew that switch. I pressed the wrong one, and then I shorted the power lines.
Yeah, so microwave ovens, if they're used the wrong way, if you jump the security in some way, they can be really, really, really dangerous.
Oh,
so
yeah.
There's a high level of security for them.
Yeah, no,
So
I get that, and that's why I didn't change anything about the way it works. I just understood how it works, and then I replaced the parts that I broke and the parts that were broken. But I don't get why the security feature is to short the power lines and expect a breaker to pop. That makes no sense to me.
I don't know. I just know that the security measures they're really stringent.
Oh yeah, there are like 5 or 6 layers of security in there.
Cool.
Yeah.
So
Not cool.
when can
Hot.
I have...
Not cool. Hot. From being microwaved.
Yeah.
So when can I have those microwave oven samples so I can create a synth?
Well, at least there are a couple motors on the microwave oven, like a fan that blows air out, a disc that rotates. So all of those are oscillators.
Yeah, there's a pitch to it. But are they sort of harmonious though? The
No.
motor, is it in sync with the fan? No. Maybe you can pop it into a tuning software and change that.
Yeah, and you can also probably play around with the voltage and get different pitches. So I guess you could play the microwave the same way that people play hard drives. They spinning hard drives, not SSDs. You can play those. So I guess you can do the same to the microwave. I guess this is the closest you can do to anything besides just banging on it and recording.
Or maybe you could create a distortion that mimics the heat waves inside the microwave oven. Like it takes the sample and it overheats it in 360 degrees.
Or I guess you could take the high voltage transformer and see what that does to the audio. Probably crap, because I don't think it's meant to do high frequencies, but I'm not going to do it.
Chris from Air Windows did a similar thing where he created the distortion based on Tesla coils. It's horrible, but it's fun.
It's quite distorted, yes.
Yeah. And he named it Nicola for obvious reasons.
Yeah. Other than that, would you believe this? I have worked on music instead of working on plugins.
Same
here.
Yeah.
I read that on the Discord.
Yeah.
So
all right.
When did we get to hear the music, Leandro? Are you going to work with Aria or?
No, I think it's pretty much done at this point, and Aria is busy, so I don't think we'll be working on these songs together. I'm thinking if I should just put it up on YouTube like I usually do, or if I should spend some more effort and do a proper music video. Probably just like me dubbing some lines, pretending that I'm playing things, this sort of thing. But I don't know. I tend to just put the music on YouTube as if it was just audio, but that doesn't get a lot of traction. But I also don't care about that too much. So I don't know. We'll see. The song is ready and it's sitting on my hard drive. I will release it at some point.
Great.
Cool. Cwits, did you have anything or?
In general, I'm today more listening than telling something. Maybe you guys remember previous time I was told that I'm making something on the STM32 microcontroller.
Yeah.
But sorry, that was unsuccessful. So the main idea was to make I2C protocol log source. Like my analog to digital converter can't work without master clock, but Raspberry Pi can't produce it. So I need to have external thing. And I was planning to make it on that microcontroller, but I realized that it's too slow and not so much capable to do. I found another solution, and it's coming from AliExpress.
Okay. I have perhaps a silly question. The Raspberry Pi probably has a way of outputting some square wave, some pulse width modulation wave. Couldn't you use that as the clock?
Probably yes, but I'm not sure. No, of course, Raspberry Pi can produce like pulse wave modulation, but I don't know how to put it in sync with the I2C protocol and how to get those things work together. The better solution is to make external clock.
All right.
So I have to wait 1 month.
Oh, that sucks. I never bought things on AliExpress because of that. When I buy, I usually take forever to buy something. I watch all the reviews, I read everything there is, I probably read the manual before I buy the thing. When I actually want to commit to the purchase, I want to get the thing as soon as possible. So I cannot stand the idea of waiting 1 whole month for something to arrive.
But in my case, that's the not the thing that I need for now. I know that I will need that thing somewhere later, and so I can order it now. So it will come. I don't know how to explain that. But yeah, I don't know what to tell. I was trying to make some LFO generator that can send its generated LFO to whatever on my software it can send. But I run in a couple problems that I don't remember what kind of problems I run into. So yeah, there is no. But at least LFO generator working. Okay.
Okay. All right.
Something like probably I need some time to rest from all that thing stuff.
And do you know what you want to work on for next time?
No.
Fair enough.
As I'm saying, probably I need to take a little bit time to rest from that. Get fresh ideas.
Sounds good. I remember last time you were like this, you came back with amazing stuff when the next meeting you had a lot to show.
obviously, when the things will come from China, then I will program a lot of things, at least analog to digital conversion, and then recording, I don't know, microphone sounds, and there will be a lot of fun. But okay, there is plenty of things to do while it's coming, but I'm struggling.
Have you ever worked with the converse, with digital to analog converters? Because one thing that I'm thinking about is that perhaps for the things that I'm working on, it would be useful to have a module capable of transforming MIDI or some sort of digital signal into control voltage. And I'm wondering if you have worked with that and what your experience was.
To be sure, no, why was... damn. With analog to digital converters, no. With digital to analog, yes. So I'm planning to do somewhere later my thing to CV outputs, a couple of them at least, make capability to work with modular gear.
Oh wait, Cwits, do you want me to recommend some nice, inexpensive DACs that I have found? I think one of them is using Raspberry Pi.
I'm not sure, but okay. There is a lot of different DACs in this world, but at least for CV conversion, as I know, it's enough like 8 bits.
Mm-hmm. Oh, interesting. That's one of the questions I had, because if you go read about this online, some people will say that 8 bits is enough. Some people will say that 12 bits is necessary. Some people will say that not even 12 is enough, because you want some kind of pitch stability. And of course, the pitch will be related to the quantization of the signal. So you're saying that 8 bits is enough?
I didn't study this topic like in deep, but at least at those schematics that I have seen, that they were using 8 bits. Probably 12 bits will be better, like you will get better resolution, yeah, and can get things more precise on the other side of the modular thing. It depends of your needs, I think.
Fair. One idea I had was to, and this is something that actually came up on my research, is instead of using a proper digital to analog converter, use like one of the pulse width modulation outputs from something like a Raspberry Pi or an Arduino, and filter that. Probably filter it heavily. And then
one of the 2 DACs I posted is actually a Raspberry Pi.
Oh, interesting.
Hi-Fi Berry.
Yeah, that thing can work also, like making pulse wave modulation, and maybe to put some transistor on the output side to get more power from that.
Yeah, I guess I would put that. I would probably take the output that is a square wave, filter that heavily so that it becomes a straight-ish line, and then feed that into an op-amp, because I will probably need to amplify it. Something like a Raspberry Pi Pico can only produce, I guess, 3.3 volts, and we would probably need something like 10 volts peak to peak, and also to allow it to draw more current if needed. So I guess to lower the output impedance of that circuit. Anyway, so you're saying that stands a chance of working. Interesting. I will perhaps explore that a little bit, because I'm interested. And if we do it that way, then first I don't have to buy extra modules that are digital to analog converters, and I can have plenty of them, because on the Raspberry Pi Pico there are, I think, 3 or 5 or more outputs that can do pulse width modulation. So I could drive a polyphonic modular synthesizer.
I sent link on the chat to the GitHub where is Arduino-based MIDI to CV converter.
Okay, I will take a look.
It uses MCP 4822 digital to analog, and this is 12 bits.
Yeah, I know that one. And I think it uses I2C to speak to the microcontroller. One thing that I don't know about I2C is, can you daisy chain? So if I wanted to have multiple outputs, could I have multiple of these connected to the same I2C port on the microcontroller?
Yes, you can easily. You just will have different addresses of the external chips. You can connect like 256 probably.
So that's just it. I read about this. And how do you set the address of the other chip? So in this case, the digital to analog converter. How do you set that?
I'm not totally sure,
Hmm.
but there should be some external things like maybe a couple pins to solder, or I don't know. But for example, when I was making my Raspberry Pi to the STM from 32 I2C communication, and then I was programming my microcontroller to have particular address, and it could be whatever I want, from 0, maybe from 1 to 255.
I see. All right. So I should look into the peripheral that I'm interested in using and check how that particular thing does this address allocation.
Oh, by the way, Cwits, you posted this thing MIDI to CV. Correct me if I'm wrong, but did Ableton have the opposite thing as a Max for Live device, a CV to MIDI converter? Or am I thinking the right?
I didn't use Ableton.
Okay. And also, the other thing I posted is from a company that makes inexpensive DACs that's called Sheet Audio. That's actually their name. And yes, the name is intentional. They actually did it to make other people uncomfortable, but they have heard great stuff about their products. And I have to share something about HISE that I have been keeping a secret for a long time, and I'm gonna say it as politely as I can, but it's very embarrassing. I should have told you guys from the beginning. So HISE, when you spell it out as a word, like for example, when you say DW in DO instead of DW, if you say the word that happens when you take HISE, it's a dirty word in the Greek language. And I'm not going to explain it, but it's actually not a curse word, but it does have, in the context, it does have a certain sexual innuendo, and I always get into trouble when talking about it. That's why I always say it HISE, so in order to be safe.
Interesting.
So, yeah,
I'm not getting anything here.
No, it's no. It's. I'm gonna explain it as politely as I can. So it's a verb. It's not a. Google Translate is not going to help you. It's not a word. It sounds like the Greek word for that. It's like not onomatopoeia. What's the other word? Homophone. No, it's a homophone. Oh, okay. It sounds the same way. Yeah.
You
Maybe
painted
I
yourself
can
into a
talk
corner
about it in
here.
the Discord. Yeah,
Fotis.
yeah. This stream is going to be banned if I could talk about it more. So
Yeah, I was surprised that YouTube picked up my Swedish curse words in another stream.
wow.
But what does it do?
You need to demonstrate it, Fotis.
I think it censors the in the automatic captions. YouTube censors the curse word, right?
That's cute.
Yeah. But sometimes it picks up things like if you say "if I can find it," it thinks you're saying the F word, for instance.
Well, interesting.
And Chris from Air Windows had the same problem when he was talking about bit shift gain.
Yeah.
If he was saying too fast, it's yeah, you remember that.
Yeah, I just shut the stream down.
Yeah.
Oh, really? YouTube will stop the stream?
Yeah.
Yes. So yeah, that's why I'm not discussing that HISE thing any further. I just wanted you guys to know. And if you are very curious about it, I can just send you a private message via Discord. Let's keep it between us. Anyone who wants to know, just message me, but please don't say it around. I just wanted to have this out there because it always gets me into trouble when I talk about it in Greece.
Yeah, Mage is here on the chat, and also Tail. So I said hello on the chat, but I'm gonna say hello in person. And Mage is saying, "I can swear in the chat. Let me try. Ableton Live." Oh, by the way, since we're talking about other DOS, Fotis, you used or you still use Bitwig.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. You're talking about the controversy, right?
Yeah. I mean, they already backpedaled the thing, so there's a lot to talk about. But thoughts on it?
I actually don't own the full version. I only have the light one. I still have I need to pay like $200 to upgrade to the full one, but so I wasn't going to get that thing anyway, that spectral suit. But I think that was a huge shot in the foot, like they say. It was a huge mistake on Bitwig's part, and I'm glad they are doing something to backpedal it, even if it's a bit too late. I think they have already lost some customers by now. But still,
So Bitwig not so good, yes.
Yeah, it makes them look ugly, especially since they were trying to show themselves as the anti-Ableton. You know that Bitwig is comprised of ex-Ableton employees, right? So they were like a revolution, like rebels who went out of Ableton and they created their own DAW. And they were forcing this open thing. Like, hey, we are the saviors of DAWs, and look how that took us. Oops.
I don't understand. What I don't understand is the reaction from the Bitwig community, because if you are a company that produces software and you produce one piece of software and then you produce another piece of software, it is reasonable for you to charge for them independently. And I think that that's more or less what they were doing. You would not go to like the FabFilter people and say, I brought Pro Q3, I now want Pro C2 as well. No, that does not make sense.
Yeah, and I think that the PreSonus is already using that model. I think they're selling both their Studio One DAW and also some of their channel strip or distortion or whatever plugin. Some of them you do have to buy separately, if I'm not mistaken. And even with Ableton, you can buy some sample packs or some Max for Live devices individually. I guess that was just the way that Bitwig advertised it, that that led them into trouble. I don't know, because I didn't ever actually follow the backlash that much. I was just reading the emails, the newsletters, and then I went to Reddit and I saw all the storm that happened. Gotta censor myself there.
All right.
But yeah, it was interesting what happened. That's it. That's my thoughts on it.
All right, let's move on. Bo, what's
Yeah.
your update?
Yeah, my update is this. With the help of CVs from the last stream, I'm going to share my screen. We did some troubleshooting in the folders. Start sharing. Can you see anything?
Yes. Right now we see that.
So much Fotis.
Yeah. Okay.
Right.
We saw ourselves. Now we see you.
Yeah. Yeah. So we went through some folders and the permissions, but as I was checking it on my own, I noticed that I don't have an avid file in the common files folder at all. And can I just add an avid file? Avid.
Well, I guess it would be a folder, right?
You can try.
Yeah, Avid audio plugins. So does it, again, me and Windows, I'm pretty new to Windows. Can I just add this sort of folder structure?
Yeah. Why?
Yeah.
Okay.
What's the worst that can happen?
Oh, I don't know.
I
With
had
Mac,
the
I
same
can
problem
fix
with the
things,
HISE wavetables.
Yeah, and I also tried doing a reinstall of iPlug, no changes. And for some reason, I can't post on the iPlug forum. I get error messages, so I need to fix that as well. So,
Maybe it depends because you're asking some not good questions.
no,
Like nobody wants to do anything, but okay.
No, I've been cursing too much on the streams, YouTube streams. I'm kicked out of the Apple. No, but it's a really nice forum. It's very much like the Reaper community. Everyone's really nice. So I have no idea why I get error messages. But I will try and add these folders and see if it makes a change, if it makes a difference. But let's jump into the functions. So I'm having issues. I've produced. I've made a couple of plugins where I've used functions, but then I've copied the code from someone else, Psyche, Tail, etc. But I've never made like a function from scratch in JSFX, and it doesn't work. Quite as simple as that. So what I want, I'm using all these EMAs like IRR filters, and I'm combining them in different ways. So I want a function for an EMA, and then so that I can use it. So basically make it a cleaner code. So reusing EMAs.
Oh yeah, I think I used the EMA JSFX that you sent me a couple of weeks ago, but I don't remember where or how, but it was cool.
All right, cool, excellent. I'm
Okay.
going to work some more on that as well. So more usability for it. So Leandro,
do you want to jump into this function and try to make it work?
Yes, please.
All right. So first, I want to understand what are the inputs and outputs to this function, if there are any.
Yeah. So the EMA, what I want is an IRR filter. This would be the code for that. It's the same one as this, albeit a bit different.
Okay.
But
I'm going to slide down so people can see it.
Pardon?
I had to slide down because my face was on top of the code. Yeah.
Okay.
So let's see. It's called EMA, probably for exponential moving average. It receives two parameters. The first is the sample, that is like the incoming sample. And then WEMA may be the weight.
Yes, exactly. And I need to change this.
Okay. And another thing that a filter needs, an IIR filter needs, is the output of the previous run of the filter.
Isn't that included in this? Isn't that included in this?
That's the var variable, I suppose.
Yeah.
Okay. And that means that because var is a global variable, it will be the same for the entire plugin, which means
Okay, yeah.
that you
That's a
are only
follow-up
allowed to
question.
run this function once, because
Yeah.
it will only remember one previous output.
So I need to produce a variable in this up here.
Well, there are several ways of going about this. I can see, for instance, on the sample section, the first line, it seems as though you want to be able to call this function using JSFX pseudo objects. Is this right? Do you want to use the pseudo objects?
I'm not super familiar with what pseudo object is. Sorry.
Yeah. Okay. Good for you. I don't like the pseudo objects in JSFX, and I don't use them. So if you don't know what they are, then you probably don't want to use them. And then I guess the best solution would be to have another parameter that is the previous output. And then when you call this function, it is your responsibility to have remembered the last time you called the function and to pass that in as an argument. Does that make sense?
Okay. I guess, yes.
Okay. So include a third argument somewhere. Maybe you want to put it as the first argument, the second argument, I don't know. And add an argument there, however you want to call it. Well,
Let's call it var.
Fair enough. And speaking of variable names, SPL, you can see that it's being highlighted differently. I am not sure how JSFX is going to deal with that, but SPL has a meaning in JSFX. It's usually something that looks like a function call, so you would use SPL open parens, a number, or close parens, and that gives you the sample for one channel. And what I'm saying is that SPL is a special name. Maybe JSFX will treat that just fine. It will say, okay, you are not using SPL like that, so I will allow you to use SPL as a variable name, but I think it's not good practice. So I think you should change this variable name to something else. Just replace SPL with something else consistently, so in all three places where that appears.
Let's call it EMA.
Fair enough.
Is var a good variable name, though?
If you want to talk about what is and isn't good variable names, it depends on who you are communicating with, right?
Yeah.
It always boils down to communication. You are writing this so that the computer will run this, but ultimately you want other people to understand this. So
yeah, and me when I check this code back 6 months later as well.
And it depends on how you think. If you think in these terms, or maybe you are referring to other sources that use these terms, maybe you are reading a paper, maybe you're reading an article online that uses these terms, then it's a good idea to keep the naming consistent. But if you're coming up with this from scratch, I think that var is not the best variable name. I think it would be better to give this a more meaningful name. For instance, it is common for the literature on filters to talk about the inputs to the filter as X and the outputs of the filter as Y. You often find that in the RBJ cookbook, in the book by Will Perkle, the C++ book, and also on the DSP guide, the Digital Signal Processing for Engineers, blah, blah, blah book. They also talk about X and Y. So I don't love X and Y. I think that they're bad names. They should be like inputs and outputs or something. But since they're so common, perhaps you could consider using X instead of SPL EMA and Y n minus 1 instead of var EMA. Does that make sense?
Yes, and I agree with they're kind of abstract. X and Y is really abstract. X.
Again, it depends on who you're communicating with. If you want to show this code to people who are very new to digital signal processing, X and Y are going to make no sense. But if you show this to someone who has read papers on the topic or books on the topic, they will see this and immediately understand X's are the inputs to the filter, Y's are the outputs to the filter. I know what's going on. So it really depends.
So hang on a bit. Y was the output, right? So that should say Y here, and X is the. Oh
Yeah.
man, I painted myself into a corner here. Output and Y. So that would be X. Should this work?
Yeah, you have some naming inconsistencies here and there. Here, go back to Skype. So don't go back to Skype. Otherwise, I will not be able to see your code. God damn it! But you still need to see me. So put Skype on the left side of your window, where your code is not, so that I can see your code and you can see me as well. It's going to be one of those meta things.
There will be some latency in this.
Yeah, but that's fine as long as you're able to read the text. It's not going to be changing too fast. All right, so now you can see me on the little window, and I want to see your code because I'm going to be referring to it as well. All right, now everyone can see everything. So I will try and name things consistently and think about inputs and outputs and help write this. So speaking of naming, if you know that EMA is exponential moving average, then go ahead. I would probably call this exponential moving average. But anyway, it's a matter of taste. But then your inputs would be X of n, weight, and Y of n minus 1. Now, naturally, I am having to write this with underscores and everything. Perhaps I could write this with dots. That tends to be my style. But in papers, you would not see that like this. You would probably see something like X of n and Y of n minus 1. Like that. But this is not a variable name in JSFX. That's why I'm using dots instead of this notation. But anyway, then in terms of the code for the filter itself, you don't need to assign to the Y EMA variable, because the last expression in the function definition is what is returned by the function. So you don't need to say Y something something equals something else. You can just say something else. And now let's get into that something else. Well, you have an expression that starts with X EMA plus equals something. And again, your intent with that is to store something in this variable, or I guess in the Y of n variable, so that it knows the previous, so that it assigns to that variable to be used later on. But because the way this function works, we will actually have to use it differently. So let's not use plus equals. And I guess what you want is to have X of n. Instead of plus equal, we can just say plus. And then we will have a multiplication, which is Y of n minus 1 times the weight. And now that this is written this way, I believe weight would be a number between 0 and 1.
Mm-hmm.
So probably we want to have this multiplication here as well. Right? So this way it adds up to 1. Otherwise, you could have outputs that are louder than your inputs.
Okay.
And then as to how to use this, that's the function definition. Now let's think about how to use this function. Perhaps you would put this function definition on the init section, for instance. And then on the sample section, you will have to have a call to the function. So let's have that call. And now let's think about the inputs. What is x of n? That's the sample that just came in. Something like that, for instance. The weight will probably be something like a slider, let's say. And y of n minus 1 is actually interesting because it needs to be the previous output of calling this. So to begin with, when the plugin is just loaded, we can say that this is 0. Of course, this is the default when you use a variable that has not been used yet or has not been assigned yet in JSFX. By default, its value is 0, but it's always nice to be explicit. So here we are being explicit and saying this variable starts as 0. Then we can say that the output of calling this is y of n. Note that this is different from that. And then we know that this code actually runs in a loop. So we know that for next time, y of n minus 1 is y of n this time. So we are just shuffling the variable around. And the next time we come around, this y of n minus 1 will be the result of the filter from the last call. And this is how you can code a relatively straightforward but very simple filter. Does that make sense?
Yeah, but it didn't make it much simpler though.
Well, much simpler than writing this in here. Right? You could just write this expression here. Fair enough. Well, it does make it somewhat simpler if you think about wanting to do this in multiple channels.
Mm-hmm.
Something like this, where this is for the left channel, and then you would have to copy and paste this for the right channel. Then there is a lot of copy and paste going on. And I'm missing some. But at least this formula is specified only once, and if you want to play around with the formula, you have to change it in a single place. So there is that. But if you want to move on and make this even... I'm not going to say this to make this simpler, but to shuffle the complexity to a different place. Oh, I noticed that Fotis is no longer showing up. Is he still on the call?
Yes, I am. What happened?
I don't know.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, now it works. Yeah, your camera turned off for whatever reason. Anyway, so you can shuffle the complexity around. The complexity that I'm referring to is the fact that you have to store these variables and you have to pass them as arguments. Because that's annoying. So is this something that you are interested in trying to abstract in some way?
My plan was to produce the function or code the functions and then in the init section so that I would have a simple like EMA, and in the sample section I would combine and I would initialize different length samples, and in the sample sections I would add them and subtract and multiply and divide as I pleased. So that I would have like a EMA.1, EMA.2, something, something.
That's strange. I'm still not visible.
Yeah, your camera is turning off by itself. I don't know why.
Yeah,
but anyway,
the light is constantly on, so I don't know what happens.
yeah, it's weird.
Anyway.
Yeah. Anyway,
You see what I'm striving for, so that I would have this, instead of writing out the code, I could write out this code and give the weight different variables that I've initialized in the init section. But instead of having this line, I would have SPL.EMA something. So it's so that the code will be sort of cleaner.
yeah, well, if that's your intent, I think that this sort of accomplishes this, because that's the formula that you're highlighting. And this formula is abstracted. This formula appears only once in the code, and you can play around with the formula in a single place. So for instance, you can play around with this notion that I introduced and see if you like it or not, and so on. And that's one thing that you can do, and you can stop here. If you want to continue abstracting something, I think that the next step, the obvious next step, is to abstract this notion. The fact that you have to shuffle these variables around and you have to pass this here and you have to store this there. This whole thing that I highlighted is a bit inconvenient. It's not the end of the world, but it's a bit inconvenient. It becomes even worse if you have two previous samples being taken in account. It becomes even...
because that's sort of the next step. So once I've tried combining EMAs in different ways, I wanted to combine the Hull average in different ways, and the Hull consists of 3 different EMAs in itself. So that would be combining like a number of EMAs. So that would be a large number of EMAs.
Yeah.
Oh, by the way, I think, Leandro, the problem is on your end, because I can see myself on.
Yeah, I noticed that too. I noticed that too.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know what's up with that.
Oh,
it
no,
seems
I'm
like it seems like there are 2 sources coming from Skype into the stream, both screen and you. And it seems like both screen is updating just fine, and you are cutting off for whatever reason. I'm not sure why.
Oh, okay.
But it is a glitch, perhaps on Skype, perhaps on NDI, perhaps in OBS. It's crazy. Anyway, it's working well enough, I guess. And yeah, both. So if you want to extract this and abstract that, then you have no option but to look into objects. Either the pseudo objects in JSFX or the real objects in the style that I am using. Because what you want is for a function to remember stuff. You want a function to remember stuff from its previous calls. A function that remembers things is an object. I know that object is a very generic name, and that's perhaps an unfortunate naming convention. Since we were talking about naming conventions, perhaps calling this an object is unfortunate, but it is the thing that people have been calling this thing I'm talking about for 50 years at this point. So there is no turning back. But anyway, an object is just a function that remembers some state, that remembers stuff. In this case, it remembers its previous outputs. And you will need objects. If you want to extract this, you will need objects. And the way you can do this in the pseudo objects is, well, I guess I can quickly show you what that looks like. So you would have something like instance y of n. So now you're saying that this function has some instance variables, instance being one instance of the object. And if you remember the C++ side of things, it's sort of like a member function in an object. And then in this case, you will have to assign, because you're now assigning to this field in the object. And then in the sample section, you we'll have to call this in a special way. So for instance, we will have to call this like, let's say that you have a left channel sort of thing, and then you have to say something like left, and then you don't have to pass this. And that's that. Oh, I guess this is okay, right? If we do it like this, I guess it's okay. But yeah, the code ends up looking something like this. And now what's different is that to call this, you don't have to remember the previous result and pass it in as an argument. It's being picked up by this object thing, and the object is what I'm calling left. So the code ends up looking like this. And I don't like this too much. I prefer to use my real objects. And for that, I guess you can watch some of my streams showing data structures. And then what I do is, instead of allocating stuff like this, I allocate using the memory. So I end up doing something like filter. That's the address of the filter in memory. And then I will have something like filter y of n is index 0 into that data structure. And then I will need to allocate that data structure. And then I will do things like that. And I will have to pass the filter as an argument here. And I can get rid of that. And then the code ends up looking like this. Again, we were able to abstract the notion that y of n needs to be preserved. But we have some advantages. Now the filter is something that can be passed around as an argument. It can be returned from functions, which is something that pseudo objects cannot do. Pseudo objects cannot be returned from functions. They cannot be put into an array in other data structures. So anyway, I have plenty of streams detailing all the pros and cons and exploring the trade-offs and everything, but I think that this is a good summary of how to abstract things, and then you are very near the kind of code that you would like to write, because you can do something like, perhaps you can pass this here, and then you can write formulas like do 2 filters and add the results, and maybe the second filter has half of the weight. This is the kind of manipulation that I think you're looking for.
Yeah.
And then you can achieve this and you are only shuffling the complexity. The complexity that it used to be here is now here, because you're talking about allocation and objects and complicated stuff. But at least the code you're able to write resembles what you're interested in doing. I hope that helps.
Yeah, this looks like what I was looking for. I need to watch this back and read up some more on objects and pseudo objects, but this should work.
Yeah, they are complicated. I had to write 1,000 little plugins to test different facets of the pseudo objects and finally decide that I didn't like them, but it gets really tricky. There are some inputs here on the chat that I would like to go over, because perhaps they have better ideas than I did. So Meiji is saying, will function EMA local blah blah work? I think it creates a local static which retains its value between calls as long as it's in the same section. Yes, that is true. So let's paste this here so we have some syntax highlighting going on. So instead of using instance, Meiji is using local. The difference being if you call this function multiple times on the same block, in this case in the sample block, then the variable will be the same for both calls. And that's not exactly what you want. If you wanted to call the function, for instance, on the user interface, you would like to call this function again, then using local variables would be good enough. So I guess there are 3 levels of variables. There are the global variables. They exist, like this one is a global variable. It exists for the whole plugin instance. It's the same variable. Then you have your local variables that are local to functions, and they are local to the different sections. And then you have your truly, let's say, member variables, either using pseudo objects or real objects. But those are specific to the instance. So you can have different instances with different notions of that same variable, or I guess they become different variables by then. But yeah. And tail is probably answering the same thing I just did, but anyway, let's read it. I don't think so, because then multiple calls will still overwrite. Yeah. Yeah, so the conversation went something like this. And Tail is suggesting to use pseudo objects. And I believe that in his library, he's using pseudo objects.
Mm-hmm.
All right, and then some conversation about MIDI and whatnot. All right, so why?
Okay, I'm still here.
Yeah.
In case you're wondering. Yeah. Hey.
Hello.
Hey, Internet.
Hey, Fotis. Is Cwits still here?
Kind of.
I just
Kind of.
posted this. Yeah.
To be honest,
this
I'm not
is-
listening
Oh, you're
as
tired?
good as I can.
Okay. I
Sounds
just
like you
post-
have there's a flu going on. That just makes you tired and
Oh,
you're short on energy and you need to rest. You're not like full on sick, but you're just low.
oh, get well soon, man.
I'll stop sharing now.
Okay.
I
So
just posted.
local,
Sorry.
if you put local in a function, would that be the same as private in C++?
Not quite. I guess the closest would be to a static variable within the scope of the function, but it's not quite the same because a static variable is kind of a global variable, and here we are talking about variables that exist within the scope of one section, like the sample section or the JSFX section. So I don't think there is a one-to-one correspondence to any kind of concept in C or C++.
Okay.
But yeah, private variables are not the same thing, because private variables are just about the visibility of a member variable, and member variables are object variables in this conversation in JSFX. So either pseudo objects or real objects, but object variables. And then no, what private does is just prevent external objects from seeing that variable, from accessing it. And in this case, it is true that external things cannot access a local variable from within a function body, but there is this notion of persistence that is to the scope of one section of code instead of being to the scope of an object. This is very much in the weeds, but I hope it makes sense.
I guess I've been checking a couple of libraries, and I haven't found a simple IRR that just does IRR. It's always it's a two-pole, or it's an IRR with an extra thing attached to it. That would simplify things if I could just sort of pull an IRR out of a library.
Bo, have
yeah.
you checked out Air Windows?
Of course I have.
Yeah, didn't Chris make some very simple IIRs, if I'm not mistaken, like that interstage filter? Wasn't that just an
Yeah,
IIR?
but it's not a JSFX library.
Yeah,
is it?
somebody has to port it, yeah.
But did you make one, Leandro?
At some point, yes, but I don't think it's in the library right now. In my library, it's not. And also, my library is using the my creation, the real objects. So, yeah, you would have to swallow that pill.
Okay, sure. Did you have a an old note for making an HMA or sort of hull average, but I don't think you got to that point.
No, yeah, I don't think I got there yet. It's in the plan.
So, yeah. It will be a cool exercise to make a library that I can access. And just, but the plan was to sort of do the math in the sample section and then access a library or a function.
Yeah, well, Dale has the answer for you. He mentioned in the chat, and I opened it up here. So it is part of his library that you can get from his website. And it is in JSFX. And
Nice.
it is an RC filter, a first order filter. So, and it's well
beautiful.
documented and everything.
Excellent.
Oh, come on, Tail, please come back to JSFX.
And as you can see, what Tail is doing is using the pseudo objects like he said you should do, and like
so it's called the RC filter. Okay. So that's what
RC stands for resistor capacitor, and that's how you would do the filter in analog. It's that filter that we talked about plenty of times on the previous meetings and in conversations with Dale.
RC set time.
Oh, see, the source has to do with exponentially weighted moving average.
So we fixed that bug.
And setting the time. Oh, this is interesting. It has a function for setting the time constant. So your weight is currently a value that has no relationship to the cutoff frequency of the filter. But using this, you could set a cutoff frequency based. You could compute the weight based on the cutoff frequency. That's what I'm trying to say. And this kind of looks familiar, doesn't it?
Yes, looks very familiar. My Skype feed is very blurry, so I can't read the text.
It happens to me sometimes. Sometimes it's very blurry. Sometimes
I'm watching the delayed version on my YouTube feed on my television.
Oh yeah, you have to wait for a few seconds.
Thanks for that. You are bumping up my number of public hours on YouTube, public view hours on YouTube. Thanks.
Awesome.
Awesome, great. I will check Tails library. It's called the RC filter. I've been looking at this. I've been searching for the wrong. I've been using the wrong search term. That's it.
Yeah, this filter goes by many names, depending on who you're talking to and depending on what they have in mind. If they are coming from an analog modeling perspective, they may call it the RC filter. If they are more like in the filter design space, they may call it a first order filter. Some people like yourself who think in terms of the time domain are thinking about smoothing averages and are thinking about the exponential moving average. So it depends on who you're talking to. You see the same thing under different names.
Yes.
Hey, we finally got to cover some DSP in this meeting.
Yeah, amazing.
Sorry for breaking the matrix.
Well, we'll get back to microwave ovens at some point.
We'll get to C++ as well.
Synth.
It's microwaves and our JSFX and HISE and and Greek curse words and Swedish curse words and
All right.
yeah.
So, are we ready to wrap up?
Yeah, I have one
Absolutely.
final thing to mention. It's very short. I just posted it on the Skype chat. It's a GitHub link that takes you to 3 HISE projects that you can download. And these are going to be my main homework. So even if I fail at that hidden parameter that we were talking about, I'm going to download these projects, load them up, see if I can make them work, and see what these people have done, how they have created their stuff, because some of them are interesting. There is a granular synth and a synth emulator and the guitar sampler, where you have to buy the samples separately, but they're only $10. This is how I granddad. To avoid confusion, there is another granular sampler that's already commercially available, and it's called Graindad. Both of these have similar names. And I joked on a friend's YouTube, shout out to DJ Av McCree. I said that Oi Grandad and Graindad are fighting for granular custody. Anyway. So yeah, this is going to be my homework, this link right there.
Interesting.
Who's paying alimony?
Probably Ableton Live.
Yeah, paying Bitwig.
Ableton pays for everything.
Yeah, and I posted a link to my. I've uploaded a video with some music, and I made a lyric video for it.
Is it an original song of yours?
Yes, and it's an original song, and it's a soft ballad per usual.
Nice. I've heard another one of your songs. It was pretty good.
Which one?
The one that lasted only 1 minute, that they had a static image.
Yes, not a static image. It's a full.
Yeah, my memory escapes me.
Yeah. I think I know which one. That was a couple of months ago, though.
Okay, I'm gonna listen to this one soon.
Right. So there's one last thing here on the chat that I want to comment on. Mage is talking about this idea of using the global memory to communicate between JSFX and RIA script to debug stuff. That is something you can do, and we have done that in one stream that is fairly recent. I was working on communicating from JSFX, the auto mixer, into a RIA script for the auto mixer that would control OBS, so that the auto mixer can be run live in Reaper and can control scene switches to switch to the person who is speaking in OBS. And it is possible. This architecture works. We have tried it out.
Amazing.
All right. So with that, I think that we can wrap up. So thank you very much to Mage and Tail for joining us on the chat, and for thank you to everyone who is here on the meeting. Thank you to Fotis and Bo and Cwits.
Thank you.
It is always awesome to talk to you all. So in 2 weeks, we will be back and we will share our progress. So see you in 2 weeks for the meeting, but probably also tomorrow for some more JSFX shenanigans. And oh no, working with parameters.
Are you streaming tomorrow?
Probably, yes.
All right.
Parameters with 1,000 faces.
Yeah. Anyway, we have to power through. So thank you all for coming. It was great seeing you. I always look forward to these meetings. It's always fun. And
thanks for the help in the chat, Tail and Mage.
Yep. All right. So let's sign out. Bye.
Right.
Bye, everyone. Bye. Thank you.
Thank you for watching the stream. You know how great it has been. Or maybe it sucked, and I am glad that you stuck with me. And soon we'll all be back together for some more coding or talking or chilling. The next time I'll be streaming.